I always get a ping in my ear like a doorbell sound, which tells me that I'm recording. So I want to welcome two people to the Lockdown Sessions podcast. So Michael Whitlow, European HR Director at International SOS, and Francine Hermans, lead for L&D, also at International SOS. Now, we've been working together for a number of years, so this is fabulous for me, because up until this point, I've only been talking to fellow coaches, and now I actually get to invite some clients in to this podcast and actually get to see you and share some stuff with you. So welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Brad. Great to be here.
Mm-hmm. Good to be the first clients,
Yeah,
first
right.
one in.
Makes you feel very special, right? Look, I've started these podcast sessions actually for a reason, because what I wanted to do was, at the beginning, I got a little bit frustrated with all these people who were telling me that they were going to learn 3 languages or learn a musical instrument or write a book. And I was thinking at the beginning of this process, I just want to survive mentally, physically, and have a business at the end of it. And so what these podcasts were about was an opportunity to actually reflect, both on video and also in audio, on the learnings, because how are you almost seemed like an empty question after a while. So I started asking people, what are you learning? And so, Michael, if I could come to you first of all, especially sitting as you do with a European role, in an environment that, from an HR perspective, you couldn't be more vital to an organization than right now. What has your observations and learnings been of the people you're seeing working in your own world? What have you observed in the last 100+ days?
Thanks, Brad. I'll start off with giving a piece of advice that with retrospect was an accident. We got ourselves a puppy 2 weeks before lockdown started, which was the best thing that could have happened. It gave us an excuse to get out and about back in March.
Brilliant.
When it was still rainy, and whenever you go downstairs, there's just a bundle of energy and positivity and licks and cuddles. So that's been a real positive for me. But in terms of what I've learned, I think my role has fundamentally changed. If I turn the clock back a year or so, it would have been around the traditional, recruitment through onboarding, through learning and development, through termination, all of those types of things. But we had our general manager come along and talk to the HR team quite early on in lockdown, and we asked him what his expectations were of the HR function. And he said, I want you guys to focus on 3 things. And it resonated for me, and it still resonates for me. He said, you need to help us manage costs. Very logical one. Our revenues are reducing, if not drying up in certain parts. There are government subsidies out there that we need to be able to take advantage of. There are difficult termination discussions that we need to have both with managers and with individuals. So you need to help us manage costs. The second one is that you need to help us engage with our people around ensuring that they are still continuing to learn, develop and grow through the lockdown, and that you are supporting their health and well-being. And through Francine and a lot of the work that the L&D team have done, I think we've made a really positive contribution to the organisation in that space, to the point where when we push out material in our organisation, we obviously send that to our sales and marketing communities, who then send it on to their clients, and their clients are saying, this is fantastic. This is exactly what our organisation should be doing for our people. So I think through Francine and the team, we've done some really good stuff around health and well-being. And then the third area was around, you need to help us, the leadership team, maintain what he called realistic positivity. So it's recognizing that we are going through difficult times, recognizing that it's not ideal for a lot of people, recognizing that there will be negative consequences for the organization, but also to maintain positivity. So again, one of the things that Francine has done is to recognize some of the amazing work that our people are doing. So celebrating the work that is currently happening. We support expats and travelers in difficult locations. A lot of those expats and travelers got stranded in some fairly difficult locations when the pandemic hit. In places like Congo, in places like Rwanda, in Papua New Guinea. So for the last 3 or 4 months, our people have been supporting those people trying to come home to their families, friends, and most importantly, good healthcare. So celebrating some of the work that we do as an organisation has been really important for me. So I think the main learning for me has been to understand what my role is, and my boss Dominic really captured it in those 3 buckets: help us maintain cost, help us support our employees, and help us maintain positivity. And that's really all I focus on in my role. And that's probably been the main learning for me over the last 3 or so months. I've actually got no idea what I will do when the pandemic comes to an end, because obviously my role will need to change, and we will all need to change. But that for me has been the focus, and has given me structure. In terms of what I've learned personally, I've probably never been busier over the last 3 months. So, my work has continued as normal. I'm one of the lucky ones who has a garden, who has a separate workspace, who has a nice puppy to play with. So, I haven't suffered personally, mentally, emotionally from working remotely. I'm also an introvert by nature, so I'm quite happy spending time away from the workplace. So for me, it's actually been quite a rewarding and interesting 3 months. Whether I'll be saying that in 6 months' time, we'll have to wait for podcast number 72 in the series.
Right.
And also,
But I love the fact that you promote getting a puppy, because I think that's great. Of course, the most important question is what dog did you get?
We love border collies, but we realised that that probably wasn't the best breed to have. So we've gone for a working golden retriever.
Oh, fabulous!
And yes. I can highly recommend the breed. They're beautiful dogs, beautiful nature.
Just bundle of love, right? Golden retrievers, yeah.
Not a mean bone in her body. Sorry, his body.
So just all the hair to come off now during the next few months as summer arrives.
Yep.
Literally, as they walk through the room, you'll see the fur just dropping on the floor.
Just like with yourself, Brad, when you.
As someone who has a Labrador and a Springer Spaniel, I can totally endorse that. Without the dogs, I wouldn't have had an excuse actually to go out every day, to go out even twice a day, to go for a run with them. Actually, I think from a mental health perspective, animals for people are fabulous. There's a reason why they take them into care homes and hospitals and care pets. I'm interested when you talk about kind of the lens that you mentioned, Dominic, when your boss comes in and says, these 3 buckets, this is what I want you to focus on. Did you then have to pass that down to your team? This is what we're doing, and then they have to then, or maybe I should give it to Francine once you answer, because that's then the focus of the HR function, right?
Mm-hmm. We were in the same meeting, so what Michael did is, when we went into lockdown, he set up recurring meetings. So normally we have a HR meeting like every quarter, a big one. Now we have a team HR directors meeting every other week. And then the other week we have a full team meeting from HR. So we're actually seeing a lot more from each other, which I think is good from an HR, the HR team meeting perspective. We are much more on point with each other and much more informed of what's happening in the other areas. And then from time to time, Michael invites someone from the other business to talk about what's happening, what they expect from us. And the first meeting, I think, was Dominic, right? The first opening
Yeah,
session. Yeah. So that was good to see for me as well. I think, Michael, taking it back to what you said about celebrating what we've been doing, as a business, we are in the business of saving lives, which is amazing. If you hear some of the stories, it's highly motivating, it's highly engaging. Like, we do amazing things, we help people, we repatriate people and their pets, cats and dogs as well. Um, and we never talk about it. It's insane how humble our employees are. It was always a key point of, when we onboard new joiners, how can we get the stories in, and using this platform from COVID-19 to celebrate our Europe heroes and have that communication go out. Lots of people came to us with stories about not themselves, but colleagues, and what they've been doing that is so great, and how they have been helping the business or their team members. And it has been a very positive message. I think it's a shame that we could only do it now, because I think we could have done it way more before
Does
time.
it mean, though, that you now have the chance to sustain it moving forward because you've created a new kind of culture around how we talk about ourselves?
I think there's definitely an opportunity. Sorry, Francine. I think there's definitely an opportunity there, Brad. I think we're very lucky as an organisation in that we have an altruistic purpose, and it's probably our biggest asset. It's what motivates our people. It's why they come to work. We haven't maximised and leveraged that asset sufficiently, but I think over the last 3 or 4 months, we've really started to. So I think that's been one of the benefits that I've seen come out of the pandemic.
Yeah. And maybe we can do it like once a quarter. It's not going to be as often, but it's definitely nice to show some love. Especially our IT team has got a lot of love, which they didn't get before. But people really appreciate them now that they have to work with their own laptop and see how it all comes together. There's a big love for our IT team.
I found it really interesting at the beginning, because people kept talking about how disconnected we were all going to be. But here we are, all three of us, and we invite each other into our rooms. And actually, there is a connection. We're almost hyper connected. Michael, you said before about being so busy. Francine, you and I worked together consistently over the last 3 months, so I know how busy you are. We've been on a number of sessions together. Actually, I wonder whether people are working even harder because they're at home, and there's almost not just a sense of, am I on call all the time? But actually, if you're sat on screens all day long having meetings, you've got to be switched on. That's what I've noticed, because if I'm on a phone call with someone on my mobile, I can be pacing around, playing with a dog. You can't quite be getting down on all fours, like rolling around with your golden retriever when you've got your, leadership team. Well, I don't know, Michael, maybe you can, but I'm sensing that you probably don't. Are we maybe working so hard that there needs to be almost a new adjustment in maybe winding back a little bit? Because I wonder whether it's sustainable to be working at this level. People talk about the new normal, but I don't like the phrase. But I don't want to just snap back into how it was, but I definitely don't want to sustain how it is.
Yeah, when we talked before, Brad, we were talking about the survey of our people. We wanted to find out how they'd been coping and what they'd struggled with over the last few months. And 9 out of 10 of our employees said they've been coping okay. They felt comfortable with their working environment. They felt that they were being productive. They felt that they were maintaining a work-life balance. If we turn the clock forward 6 months, I'm not sure we would get such positive reviews. So I think people have coped okay through that 3-month window, but I think the longer it goes on, the more negativity we will see in terms of people feeling isolated, in terms of new people coming into the organization and not feeling part of the family, not having a network. One of the things that I've noticed over the last 3 months is that for those people that I work with on a regular basis, I feel that the relationship is as strong, if not stronger, than it ever was. So for me, working with Franzine, we speak at least 2 or 3 times a week. Whereas there are some people in the team now that I just don't talk to. So I need to be conscious that I make a special effort, whether it's through a simple thank you, or rather than sending that email, just make the call, connecting with people who I could easily go a long time without connecting with. I think that's the challenge. And I wonder how well those people will cope in the longer term. I think we need interaction. We need to feel part of something bigger. I think Zoom has helped. 3 months ago, if you'd asked me to turn on the camera at home, I would have refused.
Right.
Now, when we have a HR meeting, I can get, out of 25 or so people in the team, I can get 24 people to turn on their cameras. There's always
one.
There's always one who's not camera ready.
There's always one who doesn't.
who refuses. That would never have happened. So I think the lockdown without something like Zoom would have been a very different proposition. I think the lockdown without sunshine would have been a very different proposition. I think the lockdown in winter would have been a very different proposition. And I think going back into lockdown, as I think we will go inevitably, we've seen it in Leicester recently, we've just seen it in Melbourne in Australia. I think psychologically that will have a big impact. When people start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then before you know it, that light is snubbed out and we're back to where we started. So I think we've got a long way to go. As we were talking about before, I think, the vaccine, the herd immunity, I think we're at least 12 months away from getting there. So I think social distancing is not going away. It's here to stay. As are the consequences of social distancing. And I think that will continue to be our biggest challenge.
And Michael, what you said, bringing it back when you talked about how you don't have contact with certain team members or other colleagues, I feel the same. And I think it's good to indeed have a phone call, but then part of me is another Zoom meeting, another phone call, another session to be on, because I feel like my biggest learning from the whole situation is I had to regain control of my time a lot, as well in my personal life as in my work life, because in the beginning, my first 2 weeks, I only had Zoom meetings, and it reached a certain point that I wasn't doing any work, only in the morning and then in the evening, which wasn't work-life balance. So I had to block in my time in my calendar to not have a meeting there. And in my personal life, I'm a person who likes to hear what we're going to do first before I say I'm available. So when someone invites me to something, I would like to know, oh, what is it? And then I will tell them, oh, yes, I'm available. I have nothing to do, no problem. Now in lockdown, everyone knows you have nothing to do.
So basically you're saying, Francine, that we can't say, hey, are you free tomorrow evening?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
not going to work for you.
It's not going to work. I would like to know what we're going to do.
Actually, that's a really good point, Franzine. And one of the hardest things that I found through lockdown is taking a holiday. So I'm going to see my mum, who's 88. I'm going to see her for the first time on Monday. And now 2 meetings have dropped into my calendar for Monday lunchtime.
What are you going to do?
I feel really guilty about not attending that. I probably will attend. So it's dealing with that. In normal times, you'd simply say, I'm sorry, I'm on holiday. But now people know that you're available. So even if you're on holiday, people know that you're not doing anything.
And this is what I mean when about recalibration, because I was thinking tomorrow when I'm driving up to Sheffield to move Oliver into his new house, and I was thinking of putting my out of office on, and I'm thinking it's almost ridiculous, right, to put my out of office on because everyone's out of office. But 2 weeks ago, I was running a resilience workshop online with 70 managers with a client. And we did a jam board where I had one question in the middle. Who's taken more than 3 days holiday since March 23rd? And in brackets, i.e. long weekend. 2 people on that call had taken more than 3 days off. Basically Saturday, Sunday and bank holiday Monday. Only 2 out of 70 plus people. And I think we're in an environment where actually when you talk about the well-being of your people, one of those buckets that you referenced right at the beginning, we could be sleepwalking into a well-being disaster if we don't step away from those meetings. Maybe you don't need to go to both. Maybe you do have to attend both. Maybe you can just dial in on your phone and not have to be sat there on a computer. I have a concern. So I furloughed one of my team. They've come back now, actually. And she's so happy. I can see her sending out messages to people. Francine, you even gave her a little welcome back message. She texted me to say, Francine said, welcome back. She like feels part of it again. I could see, and we're small, right? We're like the minutiae of a business, a micro business. I wonder whether we need to give people permission to step away and step back from all the work, being zoomed out, or it's, you know, some are using MS Teams and they're just teamed out. I'm feeling it. You and I had a conversation, Francine, didn't we, a few weeks ago? We were going to do a webinar. We just couldn't get people on it. And I think the feedback you were giving, people are webinared out. We just enough with the webinars, right? Let me do some work, please. From an
That's
HR
good, right?
point, right? But from an
They're
HR
working.
point of view, but from an HR, from an L&D point of view, how are you going to encourage people, including yourselves, to not ramp it down so much, but wind it back a little, like turn the volume down on this huge volume of work everyone is doing? Like, we're all being super productive. How do you confront that with a European-wide organization where everyone's in slightly different stages?
It might sound a little bit contradictory, Brad, but I think one of the ways you do that is by actually getting people back into the office physically. But in the survey that I mentioned before, our people absolutely don't want to come back to the office 5 days a week. They want to come back, but they want to come back on their terms, right. 1 to 2 days a week, catch up with friends, catch up with, you know, what's happening in the office. But they don't want to come back to what it used to be like. So I think getting people back into the office as soon as we can, I think will definitely be a positive step, because I suspect that people won't appreciate just how much damage being in isolation and working remotely on a long-term basis will do to them. I think people will become institutionalized.
I think they already are.
I don't know how long it takes to become institutionalized. It probably depends on your personality and your characteristics. But already after a relatively short period of time, people are really reticent about coming back to work. Yeah. So I think the more we can do to positively encourage them without being seen to force them, the better, because I think that will help with their well-being. So the solution to them doing more work, ironically, is to get them back into the office.
Yeah. And Francine, when you're talking to people, do you see the same reticence that Michael's referencing here? People are a little bit cautious about saying, yes, let's all go back to work, or to the office, I should say, not to work.
Yeah, I think it's a new comfort, right? You have so much time all of a sudden. I mean, you finish work, if you finish work on time, even if you work late, you're still done by 6:30, 7, and you're at home. You can start on your dinner. I feel it myself as well. Like normally I would be home with the train around 7 to 8, around that time. Then you have your evening. You have so many more hours in the day that it's a nice comfort to be in. It's a nice it's going to be hard. It's going to be very exhausting to go back to the office, because we do spend a lot of time commuting, especially in the big offices like Paris, London, all the big cities. People live outside of the cities and commute in. But that has been like the culture almost, the tradition here in London, I feel. And now this is all, they all felt what a benefit it is to actually have time in the day and to live close to work. So I think that mentality has changed a lot in people. It's going to be difficult to change this back. That's why I feel like people are only going to come into the office for like 1 day, 2 days, especially in the beginning.
I spoke to a coach the other day in France, Italian born, but living in France for the last 15 years. And he said to me, his learning was that he wants to work less and earn less.
Wow. Yeah.
And he has 2 young children at home, and set up in business last year. He's been pulling 70-hour weeks without blinking. And his learning is, I don't want to go back, actually. I love being at home. I don't want to take the train into Paris every day and spend all day in the center, in meetings, back-to-back meetings, running from one to the other just to earn a few extra euros. Actually, I want to work less and earn less. And I thought it was really powerful, because this is a coach, right, who's obviously thought about it, unlocked it in himself. And I said to him, what are you doing about it? And he's decided that when people start inviting him to come in to run workshops, he's not going to do them. He's going to pass them out to people who want to do them. And he'll earn less. And I wonder...
I'm with him, Brad. When we talked about those 3 buckets before in terms of priorities, cost saving being the first one, one of the first things I did was say to my boss, I'm quite happy to work a 9-day fortnight. Unfortunately, he said no. So,
but keep dreaming. Keep dreaming.
They need you.
I hope that through the pandemic, people don't have short memories, because I think, people are enjoying things that maybe they didn't really enjoy or value before. A simple walk in the park is one of the most enjoyable things you can do, and one of the most rewarding things you can do. Whereas I think before, people simply took it for granted. So hopefully there is a change in the way we view society, the environment, simplicity, our priorities. But I suspect that mankind has a very short-term memory, and we will revert to type in 6 months, and your French-Italian coach will be commuting 5 days a week and working 80 hours a week to move up to that bigger house. So
when I look back and I think about what it was, and now what it is, and then what it will become, these kind of 3 phases, because of what I do for a living, I'm reminded of sort of the transitions of change: current state, future state, and transition. And if ever there was a need for change management, I feel it's now, because the current state seems to have been mixed with the transition state in the pandemic, with no idea of what the future state looks like. So anybody running a change management program has clarity on what the current state is, knows a date for the future state with a vision, and works people and individuals through the transition. What I'm observing is that we're living in the current state, which is also the transition state, with no clear idea of what the future state looks like. How do you create psychological safety for people to move to a future state that we don't know what it looks like, through a transition which is different in every country, with a current state that's still ongoing?
It's a really good question, Brad, and I think it's probably one for Frenzy, and it's started.
You just want to push it to me.
He batted that straight over, didn't he? Like literally, a tennis ball just flew straight into your room there in Belgium.
It's a good question.
I think one of the benefits we have as an organisation is the fact that our people are pretty resilient, and they are quite adaptive, and they are quite flexible. And whatever the future state will hold, I think our people will have the flexibility of thought and flexibility of mindset to adapt to whatever that future looks like. That's my hope. I think there will be a lot of people who don't have that flexibility, and will really struggle with what the future looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we are very reactive as a company in general, right? Like this is the way that we work. Like we see things happen and we kind of respond very quickly to it. I think also to kind of get an idea of the future, it's good to look at the people that we have at the moment. So one of my questions that I have for myself is those people that are on furlough and we bring them back, do they have a certain anxiety with the idea that their inbox is full, that they have to get up to speed as quickly as possible while they are, on furlough for 3 weeks, 4 weeks? It must be hard to know that you had a stressful job before. The dooming moment that the stressful job comes back, even though it's security, must be also quite difficult for people.
Yeah, because I mean, apart from the fact that they've got to deal with what it will look like to try and get into work, they have to readjust themselves completely to what work will look like.
Mm-hmm.
See that my Springer Spaniel has just walked in the room. Come and say
Been waiting for this.
Come and say hello. Yeah, he's up. There he goes. Hello, everybody. This is Rocky. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, it's not your time to go out for a walk because I'm right in the middle of a conversation. You. And he's getting the headphones.
But I think from a coaching perspective, Brad, what it will do, I think, is force people to question what it is they want out of life. We've got people in our team who literally commute 2 hours each way in London, and for the last 3 or 4 months, they haven't needed to. They've commuted to their kitchen table.
Right.
Why would they choose to put themselves through that 5 days a week if there is an alternative? So I think people will question more what's important and what do they actually want out of life, and what's the future state that they want to create for themselves. And it won't be commuting 4 hours a day, I'm sure.
And does that mean as a businesses need to be able to offer people that choice? Because you were saying before about, you hope people don't forget, and some of the things that I found really lovely when you guys were talking at the beginning was how much support you offered your people, whether it was in educating them, whether it's in conversing with them, creating environments for them to be together virtually. Now they're going to be coming back and they're going to be sat in your offices saying, hey, listen, I don't want to come in every day. And do you need to be able to bend and flex as a business then? Otherwise you end up losing good people.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Brad. I know we won't be able to accommodate every single individual's requests, but I think if somebody wants to work 5 days a week from home, that doesn't work for everybody, but B, it doesn't work for every role. So I think there will be casualties. But if we can support somebody coming into the office 2 days a week rather than 5, then absolutely that's what we will do. I don't think being permanently based from home will work for a lot of individuals in our organisation, but giving people as much flexibility as we possibly can definitely will. So I think that's a focus that we've had over the last 2 years, but I think that focus will be accelerated and amplified over the next couple of years, because if we don't, then our people will simply walk and go and work for an organisation where they can work far more flexibly than they can with us.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I'd love, you talked about your engagement survey when you went out to people to find out how they were doing. I'd be really interested in the demographic specifics of that later on in the people that have struggled. I read an article just last week that were talking about which generations have struggled the most, and actually it's the sort of 16 to 21-year-olds and the 65 plus that have been struggling the most during this period. And of course they aren't of necessarily working age particularly. I know some obviously 16 to 21s do, but a lot of them are studying or in college. And so it seems as though, particularly in this country, maybe it's translated globally, we've all kind of been in the same boat. As a coach, I kind of feel as though it's the first time ever in the world's existence, the planet's existence, that we all have empathy for each other.
Mm.
Everyone's experiencing the same thing at exactly the same time. It's a fascinating image for me to try and kind of think about. I wonder if we'll be able to hold on to that learning when we come back in and maintain this level of compassion and sensitivity and flexibility to everybody that you talk about. If you could go back and change anything, what would you change, Francine?
You mean in the work environment?
Yeah, no, just now. Yeah, so now as you look back, if you could go back and change anything.
Definitely.
Through the pandemic, Brad?
Yeah.
Definitely the flexibility of which we work from home. How easy it is, before that you kind of had you still wanted to tell your manager when you would be working from home and for what reason you would be working from home. Well, I think we're going to move to a way where we just see like, oh, the weather outside is not that great. Don't really feel like commuting, or I had a rough night, so I can't really get up early. I'm going to sleep an hour extra and I'm going to work from home today, and it will be completely fine. Like, whether people come in or not, if you can declare beforehand if you go to a meeting face to face or if you will be attending there virtually. I would try to make that happen in terms of flexible working.
Yeah.
But yeah, we needed a culture shift to do so. I'm quite thankful actually.
Michael?
Mine would be similar to that, Brad. If I think back to when we used to have face-to-face meetings, if you happen to have the misfortune of dialing into that meeting, nobody would ask you for your opinion. Chances are you'd get cut off halfway through. There was no concept of seeing who's in the room. You were just out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Whereas I think being able to integrate people who are physically together with people who are virtually together, I think will be a real positive. So it actually doesn't, if you're having a leadership team meeting and 75% of you are in the room and 25% are dialing in remotely, they're part of the conversation, whereas they wouldn't have been before. So I think that's something we didn't do well before and is an opportunity for us in the future.
I like that because I think I agree with that as well. The opportunity that the tech has given us. And actually, as I pointed out to my father, who's now sending out invitations on Zoom himself for his coffee mornings with his mates. And he's like saying to me, but I was trying to send out a Zoom invite, but it says there's a clash. It's like, yeah, that's because I'm running a webinar. Right? Open your own account. Stop gate crashing mine. But the fact is, he's like, it's amazing. Tech is amazing. And I said, yeah, but you've been walking around with that in your pocket for the last 10 years. You just haven't been using it.
Yeah.
And so my kind of change is when I look back and I think, wow, that's cool, is the fact that now everybody is tech savvy. Even those of us that aren't, so we're okay, as you said, 24 out of 25 people will have their video on. I can't tell you how many coaching conversations used to take place for me virtually, because 80% of my coaching is virtual, where people wouldn't have their cameras on. And now everyone does.
Mm.
And actually, you are the minority if your camera isn't on.
Yeah.
And we want to see, and I also think it's really interesting to kind of look to see what do people have in the backgrounds. And a friend of mine suggested, if you want to play with people and mess with their heads, if anyone ever gets up in the middle of a meeting and like does a bio break or gets a coffee, as quick as you can, screenshot their background and then insert it as a virtual background on yours. and it will really mess with their heads a little bit, just to have a little bit of fun.
It's going to be hard to do it with Michael. He's just got a white background.
You're right. Well, yeah, true, actually. It would need something. Mine would be like really, I'd be weirded out. My brother pulled it on me a couple of weeks ago, and I came back in with a glass of water, and I sat down looking at his background, and I, why are you sitting in my room? It completely threw me. Guys, it feels as though we've come almost full circle there, because we started with kind of, those three buckets, Michael, that you talk about, of where the focus is. And then we've got to a point now of actually what the focus is moving forward. We've done our own little kind of transition and change curve ourselves. What would be really cool for me is if we could come back maybe in September time after the summer and just see what's happened in the next stage. And as you have brought people back into the office, what does psychological safety look like in a company that saves lives? What does it look like when actually you have to support each other coming back in? So I'm going to invite you back in 3 months' time if you'll do it.
Love to, Brad.
Brilliant. Francine, thank you. Michael, thank you so much. I'm going to push stop record and I'll pass the links out.
Thank you.
Loved that.